بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Alhamdulillah. One of the great books of our civilization is known as Al-Maktubat. It was written over 400 years ago by a man who was Sheikh Ahmed al-Faruqi al-Sarhindi, who is also known as Mujaddid al-Alf Thani, the renewer of the second millennium. So he came at the outset of the second millennium of Islam. We're now in 1436. And basically he wrote this extraordinary work. And I recently received, I had a copy of it, but I recently received a copy that came to me. It was published in Turkey from Sibghatullah al-Mujaddidi, the great scholar and mujahid that fought against the Russians when they occupied his country. It's his great-grandfather, and Ahmed Sarhindi was also a Faruqi. He's from Sayyidina Omar's offspring. Really, truly extraordinary scholar. But one of his maktubat is the 19th maktub, and it was to Sayyid Al-Mir Muhammad Nu'man, and it was about patience and also being content with the decree of Allah. And in it he says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen fi sarra'i wa darra'i wa fi al-afiyati wal bala'i فعل الحكيم جل سلطانه لا يخلو عن حكمة. He begins praising Allah, the Lord of the worlds, in sarra and darra, in hardship and in ease, in times of joy and times of sorrow, times of difficulty and times of ease. And then في العافية والبلاء, when one is in well-being and when one is in tribulation. Al-afiyah is one of the comprehensive Arabic words for simply well-being. When somebody has the afiyah, they're healthy, but it's also a psychological well-being, a spiritual well-being. It's a really beautiful word. Al-bala is the tribulation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in many verses in the Quran about bala, that the world is a tribulation, Allah will try us in the world. And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَشَدُّكُمْ بَلَاءً الْأَنْبِيَاء ثُمَّ الْأَمْثَلْ فَالْأَمْثَلْ, that the people that have the most tribulations in this world are the prophets and then those closest to them. And there's a hadith also, إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ قَوْمًا ابْتَلَاهُم. If Allah loves people, He gives them a lot of tribulations. And part of the wisdom of that is that He makes the world uncomfortable for the people He loves, because the world is not their natural resting place. It's not a place where He wants them to feel comfortable. So Allah will throw difficulties into your life. In fact, Sa'id Nursi actually says that sometimes He'll give you physical tribulations just so that you're uncomfortable in order to want to get out of this world and meet your Lord and be with your Lord. So it says, فِعْلُ الْحَكِيمِ جَلَّ سُلْطَانُهُ لَا يَخْلُو عَنْ حِكْمَةٍ. The actions of the wise, Al-Hakim is one of the names of Allah, and it comes from حَكَمَ يَحْكُمُ, which is to judge a thing, and you need wisdom to judge. And so whatever He decrees is out of His wisdom. So He says no action of the Hakim is out of foolishness. It's always a wise thing. And then لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يُرِيدُ بِهِ الصَّلَاحِ, that God can do something that you think is not a good thing for you, but He's actually doing it to rectify you or to bring about some rectification. And then he quotes the Quran, وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَى أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So he says that maybe, and this is from the Quran, maybe you detest a thing and in it is good for you, and maybe you love a thing and in it is harm for you. And God knows, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and you don't know. So that's the operative meaning to take from that, is that you have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that what's happening to you is happening for a wisdom, because He is Al-Hakim. So then he says, and this is the advice of Sayyid Ahmed Sarhindi, فَاصْبِرُوا عَلَى بَلَائِهِ وَارْضَوْا بِقَضَائِهِ. Be patient with the tribulations He gives you, but also be content with His decree. Be content with His decree, because the sakhat, being angry at the decree of Allah, is one of the deepest sicknesses of the heart. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاثْبُتُوا عَلَى طَاعَاتِهِ وَاجْتَنِبُوا عَنْ مَعَاصِيهِ. and also be firmly resolute in your obediences to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and avoid any disobediences. Subhanahu, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is what people who believe in Allah say when إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ. When they're afflicted by any calamity, they say, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to Allah, and to Him we're returning. So these calamities are from Him to remind us and to bring us back to Him. قال الله تبارك وتعالى وما أصابكم من مصيبة فبما كسبت أيديكم ويعفو عن كثير. That no calamity afflicts you except it's from what your own hands have wrought. In other words, any tribulation that comes to us as a species and us as individuals, we actually deserve it. وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. And He forgives much. He forgives much that He's doing. And so that's another really important thing to remember, is that everything that afflicts us comes from our own selves. And yet He forgives many, many things. So this is one of the foundational metaphysical principles that the Quran has. And it's very important for Muslims to remember that, because a lot of Muslims now tend to want to blame things outside of themselves and always look that it's somewhere else. If you read the Quran, what you'll find is that the person that blames in the Quran is Iblis. And the person that takes responsibility is Adam alayhi salam. And this is why Adam was given the khilafah, the caliphate, over Iblis. Because Iblis blames, he even blames Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bima aghwaytani la aghwiyannahum ajma'in. Because you led me astray. This is what Iblis says to God. Because you led me astray, I'm going to lead all of them astray. This is a sickness, it's a disease of blaming the other for what happens. This doesn't mean that there is not wrongs and rights in the world. And a lot of people confuse this, because you can look at things at the political level, and then you can look at them at the metaphysical level. If you look at them at the political level, you have to deal with them as political problems. So there are oppressors and there are oppressed. There's right and there's wrong. But if you look at things at the deeper level, which is the metaphysical level, it enables you then to grapple with right and wrong in a way that doesn't destroy your heart. But if you forget that balance, it's having bifocular vision. It's having, when you have glasses, some people need bifocals. So you can see far and then you can see close. The political is looking close, but the metaphysical is looking far. And so this is not denying that there are egregious wrongs being done by some people against others. But spiritually, how do we understand those wrongs? That's the metaphysical question. And that's really what he's addressing here at the level.